Willie Wales at immortal.wales. I might look like Action Bronson, but no, I'm not related to him.
Describe your style.
I like to do a lot of realism. I grew up doing graffiti, so I try to take influence from that as much as possible. I'm from Toronto, grew up in Scarborough.
What brought you into tattooing?
So I used to work in video games, and one of my buddies pushed me into tattooing, and I just thought it was more me.
Were you apprentice, mentored, or self-taught?
I took an apprenticeship, but it wasn't the greatest. I learned a lot from my cousin over text message. He's out in Winnipeg, and as well as one of my old bosses, and he introduced me to a lot of other artists, and I just tried to pull as much knowledge as I can. I still do as much as I can. I think the major problem with the tattoo industry nowadays is a lot of people are getting into tattooing because they think it's cool or they think they can make a lot of money. But I think the first and most important thing you should be doing is making sure you love to draw, doing it all the time, and getting your skills up as high as you can before getting into tattooing.
How long have you been tattooing?
I've been tattooing 6 years now. I think the industry grew really fast, even in the 6 years that I've been tattooing. And imagine, guys that have been tattooing for 12 years are just blown away, And there's a lot of benefits that come with that, but a couple negatives as well.
Have you always worked in a shop?
Yeah, I don't believe that. I don't believe in working from home. I'm very much against it, and I'll always work in a shop. One of my favorite things about tattooing is meeting different people, whether they're artists or whether they're clients, hearing different stories, sitting down with people every day. And one of my favorite things is having a good, solid team where we can feed off each other, learn from each other, and grow together.
Have you ever owned a shop?
Yeah, I have owned a shop, but I don't think I'll do it again. Not anytime soon, at least.
What is your thought on apprenticing?
I think that, obviously apprenticeships are good for the industry and getting new artists involved, but there are a lot of people nowadays that are taking on apprentices when they've only been tattooing for a year or maybe 2 years, 3 years, whatever. And I don't believe that your knowledge is great enough in that time to be able to teach somebody else about this industry.
Would you take on an apprentice nowadays?
I do have an apprentice, but I do it in a way where my two other friends and I, we all collectively are helping her and sharing as much as we can with her.
What do you believe an apprenticeship looks like in today's industry?
I think that it's become way too easy, that you get people coming in and they've been in an apprenticeship for a month and they're already on a machine, and I think that you need to have a more solid, thorough apprenticeship than jumping right into something that is a very serious deal. Tattooing is not a joke, and you can hurt somebody.
What do you believe is lacking in an apprenticeship with the current generation of artists?
Cleaning toilets and doing coffee runs and making life hard. And it's not just about that, but also, I tell my apprentice to draw every day, and I want to see drawings constantly. And I think that, again, focusing on drawing and loving drawing, it makes a good tattoo artist. And if you can't do that, then you're in the wrong industry. Nowadays, people are trying to get sponsorships, and I think that they need to worry more about just tattooing, because Instagram followers has become a big thing, and everybody wants to have so many followers, and if you get sponsored, they're going to help you get more followers. Just focus on tattooing.
In your opinion, seek or be found?
Be found.
Shops versus private studios, what are your thoughts?
So if the private studio is a private studio that you don't live in, that it is basically run like a shop, maybe just without promoting it as a shop, that's fine. but I am totally against tattooing at home, and a private studio where you live in the same building is tattooing at home. If you're talking about a private studio that is essentially somebody just working out of their house, I think that it's important that the tattoo artists in the industry, whether it's teaching those coming up or just speaking out against it, making sure that people understand the importance of working in a shop and not being a scratcher at home.
In your opinion, are guest spots positive or negative?
Guest spots are great. I want to do more of them. I mean, it's a great way to bring artists from different places and also go other places and expand your following.
Tell us about the craziest tattoo experience you've done to date.
So I had this 85-year-old woman come in, and her husband had died, and she decided that it was time for her to get a tattoo. And anyone that knows or has tattooed somebody that old, you know it's like very difficult because there's not a lot of fat tissue in their skin, and you have to be very, very sensitive. So yeah, that was pretty interesting and cool.
Tell us about a tattoo you wish you never did.
Pretty much every tattoo I did in the first 2 years.
Dead or alive dream tattoo client. Who would make your day to tattoo, and what would you tattoo on them if you had the artistic freedom?
I would love to tattoo George Carlin if he was still alive, and I really don't care what he got. It would just be fun to sit down and talk to that guy. My first tattoo was a spray paint can on my leg, and it's actually the only one that I regret.
Do you still have it?
Yeah.
Let's see it.
It's this one right here.
Describe the client, the work done, and the work you're about to do.
So she's a good client. She kind of just lets me do whatever I want. We're doing a Viking leg sleeve, and today we're finishing the gap between the top and the lower.
Perfect.
Shiver as it's going in, dark green sticking on the skin, pressing harder as you go, black mass will soon start to flow in my veins, pressing harder as you go, I can feel it flow, yeah, through my veins, it's like you are a tattoo, breaking open my inside, pain that I can't hide, tattoos on my inside of you. Tattoos on my inside of you. Tattoos on my inside of you. It's like you are a tattoo, breaking open my inside. Carry you wherever I go. Can't lose you. I wish you were like a costume. Take off and throw away, wash you off with water. Just like paint. Wherever I go, can't lose you. Oh, I wish you were like a costume. Take off and throw away, but like a tattoo, you just stay. It's like you are a tattoo, breaking open my inside. Just the pain that I can't hide. Tattoos on my inside of you. Tattoos on my inside of you. Tattoos on my inside.
What are you using? Please explain your setup.
7 mag, 15 curve mag, small round shader, and a 3. And then I use usually 5 different washes and a water, a cap of water. So I use usually around 5 different washes depending, and I sometimes mix a little bit of white into the lighter wash just to thicken it out a bit so that I can get smoother light gray areas, especially for like background stuff. I find it helps smooth it out a little bit more. Today I got hustle butter down. It's my favorite. Smells good. This is a huge plus.
How do you recommend to heal tattoos?
So I like the Second Skin products, Sanoderm and Taderm, any of those products, because that's literally the best way to heal a tattoo. Put it on, leave it on for 7 days, and when you take it off, your tattoo's healed. And it eliminates any kind of worry about whether, you know, my work is gonna get trashed if the client gets it dirty, or just a safer and better product than the old school like saran wrapping it or something. Some guys will print their stencils now with realism. They'll just take the photo. I don't like to do that. I like to do it by hand, just because I think it's part of tattooing, and some things need to be automated and some things don't. But that's me personally. But as far as applying the stencil, first I wipe it down with alcohol and use stencil stuff. Put the stencil on, and then I always pat it dry before spraying it again with the stencil spray.
Do you want to explain your lining process?
So I tend to work from bottom up, and there's not really a lot of lines, but I use lines to hold areas where I want over time the tattoo to look sharp. And I find if you don't put that line in, then it'll start to blur out over time.
Do you want to explain your shading process?
So shading, for large areas, I like big curve mags, and I try to do one motion and speed, and I build up from light to dark, just to try to get it as smooth as possible. But I find if you change your hand speed, then you're spacing your needles out, which will, create imperfections. In my bottle is just straight water. It keeps the stencil a lot longer, but even still, my stencil still wipes away throughout the process. And that's why I think it's so important that your drawing skills, you're comfortable with being able to draw, because you can improvise, you don't need to follow the stencil if you know how to recreate something without it, you know what I mean? So right now I'm just building up different areas. Unfortunately for her, attacking the back of her knee, but I like to work slowly in each section, and I'll start with some of the darkest areas and kind of just like chisel them out, and then I'll work building my grays up. And I try not to go too dark right off the bat, because then once it's dark, right? But you can always make it darker if you go light first. And yeah. I think the hardest part is I'm not just looking at the piece I'm doing today, because this whole piece is one. So I want to make sure that everything I place in tattoo will flow with everything else. So it's, try and find that right level of contrast and everything to flow with the light. It's probably the trickiest part for me today.
Any tips, tricks, or advice you want to?
One thing I try to do as often as I can is don't focus on tattooing for that day and like treating it like you'll never see it again. I think that 2 passes and going back into things is crucial, and makes a big difference, not only for the piece but for the trauma to the skin within one large session can be pretty painful and do a lot of damage to the skin if you're going into it too hard. But doing 2 passes allows you more freedom to like build that piece and have it essentially look better over time because of it.
Talk about the tattoo project. Lay out the entire sleeve project. What did you do? What did you avoid?
So she picked a Viking theme. So what I always try to do is find images that are interesting to me and also have good contrast and lighting, so that they'll look good translated to the skin. And then the hardest part about a large project like this is making sure everything flows together. So that's one thing I'm like consciously trying to think of. Shout out to Primal Live and Primal Attitude. I'm out here at Sink or Swim every weekend, and my Instagram is at immortal.wales if you want to get tattooed.